Like Liz says, her life is an open book. I've never seen anybody go through all the things that Liz has gone through. She holds it all right out there in front of you. And boy, she's a tough lady. So I want you all to put your hands together and welcome the great Liz Harrison from Channel 30. But why don't you tell us first, how in the world did you get started with Channel 30? How did that all come about? How did you get in the TV business?
God. No, seriously, it's a God story. Because when I was graduating from college at the University of Florida, I had my eyes set on getting into broadcasting and nothing was going to stop me. And at that time, I was engaged to be married to a man who was living in Virginia and working for a 3-generation law firm. And there was not a whole lot of chance that I was ever going to move out of Virginia. So I started applying to every single station in Virginia. And back at that time, you have to understand, this was 1982, and there were not a whole lot of women working in the business. I can't believe that was the beginning of my career. But basically, if a station had a woman working for them, they had met their quota. And so, needless to say, I didn't get a whole lot of nibbles at all. So I was about ready to give up the broadcasting business, and I told my dad at that time, I'll just become a bank teller or a travel agent or something like that. And my dad was fine with that because he didn't really want his daughter to go into broadcasting because that was a business for really rough and tough men. My dad was very old-fashioned. And long story short, after I had moved to Virginia and just figured that I was never going to get anything in broadcasting, I got a call from the news director at KFSN, which is ABC30 now. He said, I saw you on somebody else's resume tape. And as it turns out, it was a girl that I was going to college with at the University of Virginia, or the University of Florida, that's where I graduated from, who had put me on her resume tape for 8 seconds. She was the reporter that semester. I was the anchor for the semester at the college television station, and the news director saw that 8 seconds and tracked me down through the University of Virginia, through my parents in Illinois, and finally caught up with me at the end of July back in 1982 and asked me if I would be willing to come out to do an interview. But he also knew that I was Liz Harrison and living in a place called Harrisonburg, Virginia at that point, and figured there was no way, if my family owned the town, that I was ever going to leave Harrisonburg, Virginia to come to Fresno, California. But I still had stars in my eyes at that time, and so I figured I'd never been to California before, and I'd go out and do the interview, and it'd be really fun. And there's no way I would take the job. Well, they offered me a position that was just too good to pass up, and I ended up moving here in August of 1982, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Okay, so was that tough for your daddy, really, to accept the role you took out here in Fresno? How do you handle it?
Well, you got to understand, my dad being traditional as he is, everything in his mind was all set up. I was going to marry into a family of a 3-generation law firm. We were going to be members of the country club. We were going to live in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and my name was Harrison. And who could ask for more? And he just felt like I was throwing everything away to move to California. People on the East Coast have kind of a different view of Californians. I kind of understand why, but in some respects I don't, especially in the Central Valley. The Central Valley is very much like a lot of places where I lived when I was growing up. It's very conservative. But, there are those other parts of California. So anyway, but my dad did finally come around when he came out here to visit, and I would take him to the station, and he would meet the people that I worked with, and he realized that it wasn't as crazy business as he thought it was.
And what is a routine day for Liz Harrison? Because now you're leaving from here, and you go to the station, but walk us through that. How many days a week do you work? Do you just work 1 hour a day when you're on the air? What do you really do?
Well, my life has changed dramatically in the last year. So my routine is a little different now than it used to be this time last year, because in July of last year, we got guardianship of our grandson, who just turned 2 in May. So when we got him last year, he was a year old. He had already lived with us for about 5 months, from the time he was about 3 months old until the time he was about 8 months old. So we were kind of used to having him around, and then we got him full time. Used to having him around and having him full time is 2 different things. And you know what? A year ago it was really easy. Now that he's 2, we don't have any time to ourselves. Keith Allen, my better half, honestly, I could not do what I do if it weren't for him. I work until midnight every night, and so I'm not really fond of mornings. But I have a grandson that wakes up at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So thankfully, Keith is an early riser. He goes to bed earlier than I do. And so he gets up with our grandson in the morning. His name is Ace, by the way. How about that?
I like it. I like it.
It's growing on me. But he really is an ace. Anyway, he gets up at about 7 in the morning, and he and Papa, he's Papa and I'm Yaya, and so he and Papa have coffee and watch Daniel Tiger, and he fixes Ace breakfast, and then the race is on until he goes down for a nap. That's the most wonderful time of the day. We hope he never gives up his naps. He usually goes down for a nap between 12:30 and 1. That's Papa's alone time at that time because I get ready for work. But in the time in between, we do all kinds of things. We clean up, we play Play-Doh, we make messes. We're potty training right now, which is, yeah. So, you know what's really interesting though? I find that I am a lot less stressed now about potty training, and he's still taking a bottle at night, and I'm like, oh, you probably shouldn't be doing that, but I don't care. It's easier for me. So that's kind of where we are with that. And I work from 2:30 until about 11:45 every night. And when I get in, we have a production meeting from 2:30 to 3. We talk about the stories we're going to do that day, the stories that have already been covered during that day. After that, I meet with our 5 o'clock producer, and we go over what we're doing on the 5 o'clock news. I ask her if she needs help writing any of the stories for 5, and I do that. And then I go into the dressing room, and it takes longer and longer to put on makeup these days. This is a young person's business. So anyway, then I do the 5 o'clock news, and then I have to write some more teases because we record teases at 7 o'clock. So I write all of those, and Warren and I, my co-anchor Warren Armstrong and I switch off as who does those. Have about a 45-minute break for dinner. If I don't have to record those teases at 7 o'clock, then I'll run home for a dinner break, and that consists of not even hardly sitting down to eat and running around after Ace, and we put him in the bathtub. But if I don't go home, Keith has to do all of that by himself. So, and he really has been doing the lion's share of the childcare. So anyway, back to my schedule. So after dinner break, we have another meeting at 8:15 where we talk about what we're going to put into our newscast at 11 o'clock. And then between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, we write for the 11 o'clock news and put it together. We have to get on social media and try to promote what we're doing. So we're Facebooking and tweeting and Instagramming and all of those kinds of things. And yes, that's all a part of my job now. So there's really not a dull moment in between. Some people say, well, what do you do after you get off at 5 o'clock? Do you just kind of take a nap? And it's like, no. And so then we record more teases at 10 o'clock, again at 10:30, and then we get ready to go on the air at 11 o'clock. So it's really, it used to be a lot more low-key, but now that we have to do all of these teases and social media, the day goes by pretty fast.
So Liz, let's talk about some tough issues, because again, you've been a very open book and you've been through some hard stuff with kids. So what can you share with all that?
With my son, Ace's dad, it's been extremely difficult. He's angry, and when he's using drugs, his anger comes out, and it's directed a lot towards me. We even had a visit from Child Protective Services 2 weeks ago that we're pretty sure my son called and told CPS that we were not taking care of Ace and listed all of these reasons why. And so we ended up having to meet with a social worker at our house and explain that we really were doing a good job with Ace, and and it just, those kinds of hassles I just really wish we didn't have to deal with. The text messages late at night that are just nasty, and even having to go through court, even though they were not capable and knew they couldn't take care of Ace, they wanted to make it as difficult as possible for us to have Ace. So finally in February of this year, we got permanent guardianship, which means basically we did not adopt him. We are taking care of him until, or if, his parents ever get clean and sober, and then they have to go back to court and prove to the court that they are capable of taking care of Ace full time. So that's one son. I have another son, Benjamin, who made headlines back in 2009, as you may recall. And I was just saying to Keith this morning, I so grateful that social media was just getting started at that time, because I can't even imagine how difficult that would have been. It was bad enough reading the articles in the paper. For those of you who don't know, my son, Benjamin, who was an outstanding athlete and student at Clovis West, ended up on OxyContin, which is a prescription painkiller, and got addicted and ended up doing heroin. He was a functioning addict for a very, very long time, but ended up with a downward spiral back in 2009 and committed a couple of armed robberies in order to get money for drugs, and was arrested and sent to prison. And I could write a whole book about that experience, having to visit different prisons across the state over that period of time. It was humiliating. And I was going through breast cancer treatment at the time, and I was bald, and I had these little metal things in as they were doing my breast implants and my expanders, and it wasn't enough for them to wand me or let me go through the metal detector. I had to pull up my shirt and pull down my pants, and it was just humiliating. But long story short, Ben now has been out. It'll be 2 years in August, and I can honestly say he's doing really, really well. He did relapse last year, last summer, in fact, and that was so heartbreaking. He had overdosed, and it was his girlfriend's father that found him in his apartment and called me, and the paramedics ended up having to take him to the hospital. But immediately he realized what had happened. He checked himself into treatment over at CAP, Comprehensive Alcohol Program, Addiction Program, and he was released in November, and he has been clean and sober ever since, and he's really, really working hard at it, living with a wonderful family in Clovis, his former girlfriend. I don't know how to describe their relationship, but anyway, it's good. But anyway, he's living with them, and he's a fantastic uncle to Ace. So I have great hope for him. He actually is a personal trainer and is amazing physically and mentally at this point. He's getting his psychology degree through National University, and wants to be a substance abuse counselor when he graduates. So I'm thankful for that. And I do have a daughter. I do have a daughter who works in Dallas, Texas. She just turned 24 years old, and we were just talking to her in the car on the way over here. She works for Southwest Airlines, and she's only been out of her training program for a month and just got a promotion where she is now going to be a mentor to all of the other people that are starting up. So she's a little go-getter, and I'm really, really proud of her. So
how has Jesus really, how has he really impacted your life? How has your faith really been able to get you through this? Because you've been through a whole lot more than most of us will ever go through.
Well, let me just say this. I have talked to Keith a lot over the last year about how I really feel like my prayer life is failing and I don't have enough time to spend with the Lord. But I don't want to be too hard on myself. I think in a lot of respects my spiritual life has changed. I'm doing what I can do at this point, and that is praying all the time. All the time. I pray on my way to work. I pray on my way home from work. I pray when I'm driving in downtown Fresno and I see homeless people and know that my 30-year-old son is out there somewhere, and pray for him. And I pray for my husband to give him whatever he needs during the day to take care of Ace. I pray for Ace. We have a prodigal prayer group that we still, it's email prayer request or text message prayer requests now, but all of us in the group are going through a really hard time, and we're praying for each other and each other's children. And so I don't get that concentrated time in the morning anymore, because when I wake up, I'm on. I'm 100% on. So I can spend time at night. I'll have to be honest, when I come home at night, my favorite thing to do is read or binge on Netflix. And that's, it's just what I do. I have to have that decompression time. But Jesus has just become second nature to me, and and he is my friend, and he listens to me, and I try to listen to him. My listening skills have not been as good over the last year as they have been, but Keith and I do make a point to come together and to pray about things, and to be intentional about decisions that we make for our family. And so, my faith is as strong as it ever has been, but it's changed a lot. And I don't know whether that's good or that's bad, but it is what it is for right now. And I'm, it is what it is.